Room 1. Pogo the Clown costume from John Wayne Gacy. Situated in the center of Room 1, directly facing the vault entrance, is the clown suit worn by John Wayne Gacy. Known as Pogo the Clown, Gacy used this alter ego to perform at community events while secretly luring his victims to his home. He murdered at least 33 young men and boys in Illinois between 1972 and 1978. He buried most of the bodies in the crawl space of his home. Gacy was sentenced to death and executed by lethal injection at Stateville Correctional Center on May 10, 1994. The costume is preserved upright, symbolizing the duality of innocence and horror that defined Gacy's public and private lives. 2. Tattooed human skin from Lowell Sloan, the tattoo collector. In the lower right corner of Room 1, displayed in its own shadow box case, are 3 tattoos made of human skin, including an entire arm sleeve. These came from Lowell's victims, a successful anesthesiologist who murdered 26 people between 2014 and 2022 in Austin, Texas. He selected tattooed individuals to skin them alive and add to his grotesque collection. He was killed by Dexter in a tattoo parlor to prevent Lowell from murdering another target. 3. Victim photographs from Gareth Pike and his twin brother, the Gemini Killers. Mounted in the upper right corner of Room 1, leading toward Room 2, is a grid of 12 photographs, the most trophies received from any killer. Accounting for 24 deaths, these images show victims posed post-mortem, captured in pairs. They belong to the Gemini Killers, Gareth and his identical twin, known for staging killings in mirrored symmetry. The photos are presented in a formal, gallery-style frame above other trophies, emphasizing the killer's obsession with duality and presentation. Both twins were killed by Dexter. Gareth's twin killed in Dexter's apartment, and Gareth was killed while at Prater's castle in front of Al Jolly, Charlie, and Prater, with Dexter making it look like self-defense. 4. Victim's driver's license from Ronald Schmidt, the dark passenger. Just below the Gemini photographs is a single blood-marked driver's license, given to Prater by Dexter. It belonged to Tyler Day, the first known victim of Ronald Schmidt, a rideshare predator active in New York City. Schmidt, dubbed the Dark Passenger, decapitated 12 victims using a serrated fiber wire, keeping their licenses as trophies and marking the faces with an X in blood. Dexter killed him, disposed of his remains in a furnace, and took his spot in Prater's serial killer club. 5. Rings and cufflinks from Mia LaPierre, Lady Vengeance. Also on the same vertical display wall, beneath Schmidt's license, is a set of 2 rings and a pair of cufflinks, all recovered from the bodies of Mia LaPierre's victims. Known as Lady Vengeance, Mia began killing at age 15, and supposedly targeted abusers across the East Coast. In reality, several of Mia's kills were innocent, with her killing for sport because she enjoyed it. She bludgeoned her victims and gouged out their eyes, often taking jewelry as tokens.
Next door. I think some chick's trying to murder him. I heard her call herself Lady Vengeance or some. You gotta send help.
Sir, try and stay calm.
Stay calm, my ass!
Dexter set her up to be arrested, and Charlie paid off a guard to kill her while she was in jail. She was hung, made to look like suicide. 6. Map and cipher letter from the Zodiac Killer. In the upper left corner of Room 1, a glass case displays a map of Northern California along with a copy of one of the Zodiac Killer's infamous cipher letters. The killer, never caught, taunted law enforcement with cryptograms and claimed 37 victims in his last confirmed letter in 1974. The cipher in the vault remains unsolved. 7. Murder Castle Blueprint from Dr. Henry Howard Holmes, H.H. Holmes. Below the Zodiac display, pinned in the left wall, is a faded architectural blueprint, believed to be from H.H. Holmes's infamous murder castle in Chicago. Holmes designed the structure with hidden rooms, chutes, and trapdoors to carry out his murders undetected during the 1893 World's Fair. Holmes is widely considered to be America's first serial killer. He was convicted and sentenced to death for the murder of one of his accomplices, but he confessed to 27 murders. Holmes was hanged on May 7, 1896. The blueprint shows an annotated floor plan with several concealed passages marked in red ink. 8. Victim list and notes from Belle Gunness, Hell's Bell. Directly beneath the Holmes blueprint is a handwritten slip of paper recovered from the Gunness property in LaPorte, Indiana. Belle Gunness was suspected of murdering over 40 suitors and children in the early 1900s. She supposedly died in a house fire, but the body was approximately 5 inches shorter and 50 pounds lighter than that of Gunness. The slip contains victim names and notes in her handwriting, documenting her methodical planning. 9. Rat poison box from Nani Das, the Giggling Granny. Below the Gunness trophy is a preserved vintage container of rat-nip poison. Nani Das, known as the Giggling Nanny, poisoned at least 11 family members over 2 decades. In all, it was revealed that she had killed 4 husbands, 2 children, one of her sisters, her mother, 2 grandsons, and a mother-in-law. She was only tried and convicted of 1 murder and received a life sentence. Das died from leukemia in the hospital ward of the Oklahoma State Penitentiary in 1965. The poison was her weapon of choice, often slipped into food and drinks. The worn label is partially stained with visible age damage on the tin. 10. Refrigerator from Jeffrey Dahmer.
Holy really like serial killers.
I pride myself on finding the best of the best in every field, so why not death?
Between room 1 and room 2, in the archway passage stands a worn refrigerator unit. This is supposed to be the bloody fridge, where he stored some of the body parts of his victims, recovered from Jeffrey Dahmer's apartment in Milwaukee. Dahmer murdered 17 men and boys between 1978 and 1991, engaging in acts of necrophilia and cannibalism. On November 28, 1994, Dahmer was beaten to death by a fellow inmate at the Columbia Correctional Institution in Wisconsin. The refrigerator represents one of the most macabre parts of his legacy. Room 2. 11. Kill table from Brian Moser, the ice truck killer.
That is the table where the ice truck killer took his own life.
At the center of room 2 is a grated metal kill table, originally from Brian Moser's residence. Known as the ice truck killer, Moser drained his victims' blood and dismembered their bodies with surgical precision, often arranging parts and displays to get Dexter's attention. Though publicly believed to have died by suicide on this table, Moser was actually killed by his brother, Dexter. The table was later used by Prater during his failed attempt to force Dexter into killing Angel Batista, and finally by Dexter himself to execute Prater. 12. Cloth noose from Israel Keys. In the upper right corner, mounted in a frame, hangs a hand-tied cloth noose. It was recovered from one of the kill sites associated with Israel Keys, a meticulous killer who operated across multiple states. Keys prepared kill kits in advance and buried them across the country, returning years later to use them. He was suspected of murdering 11 people. While being held in jail at the Anchorage Correctional Complex, he died by suicide by cutting his wrists and attempted strangulation on December 1, 2012. This noose is presumed to be linked to one of his unconfirmed murders. 13. Victim teeth from Robert Pictton, the pig farmer. Below the Israel Keys display, in a segmented shadow box, is a collection of human teeth. These belong to victims of Robert Pictton, a pig farmer in British Columbia who confessed to murdering 49 women. Pictton allegedly ground up the remains and fed them to his pigs. Pictton died in 2024 after being attacked in prison by another inmate at the Port Cartier Institution in Quebec. The teeth in Prater's vault, partially decayed and still bearing traces of enamel wear patterns, are displayed in a sterilized glass case. 14. Leather gloves from Samuel Little. Further below, another case holds a pair of worn leather gloves attributed to Samuel Little. The most prolific serial killer in U.S. history was convicted of 8 murders and confessed to committing 93 murders between 1970 and 2005. The FBI has confirmed at least 60 of those kills. He often strangled women and sketched portraits of them from memory. Before his death on December 30, 2020, Little was serving a sentence at California State Prison, Los Angeles County. These gloves are believed to have been used in several of those killings, with fibers linked to multiple crime scenes. 15. Twin blades from the Harpe Brothers. On the right wall of room 2, encased vertically, are 2 short blades used by the Harpe Brothers, Makaja and Wiley, 18th century highwaymen, and some of America's earliest recorded serial killers. The blades are preserved with remnants of rust and blood and are displayed in parallel to highlight the brothers' brutal efficiency. Sometime during 1797, the Harpes began a vicious crime spree through Tennessee, Kentucky, and Illinois. The Harpes later confessed to killing a confirmed 39 people, but the estimated combined total, including unknown victims, may number more than 50. They are alleged to have butchered anyone at the slightest provocation, regardless of age, including babies. As he lay dying, Makaja Harpe confessed to 20 murders. While Harpe was still conscious, Moses Stegall slowly cut off the outlaw's head. Later, the head was spiked on a pole at a crossroads near the Moses Stegall cabin that is still known as Harpe's Head, along a modern-day highway in Webster County, Kentucky. In January 1804, Wiley Harpe was executed by hanging. His head was also cut off and placed high on stakes along the Natchez Trace as a warning to other outlaws. 16. Serrated blade from Andre Crawford. Adjacent to the Harpe blades is a serrated knife attributed to Andre Crawford, who murdered 11 women on Chicago's South Side. Crawford frequently returned to his crime scenes to violate corpses. In December of 2009, Crawford was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, and was imprisoned in Illinois at the Menard Correctional Center. He died on March 18, 2017, 2 days before his 55th birthday, of liver cancer. The blade shows heavy discoloration and signs of forensic testing. 17. Bloodied switchblade, from Richard Cottingham, the torso killer. Next to Crawford's weapon is a blood-stained switchblade, once used by Richard Cottingham, who earned his nickname by dismembering his victims. He often kept body parts as souvenirs. The blade's mechanism is rusted shut, but blood traces are visible on the edge and hilt. Cottingham committed 18 murders in New York State and New Jersey between 1972 and 1978. He was nicknamed by the media as the Torso Killer and the Times Square Ripper due to acts of mutilation. In 2009, Decades after his first murder convictions, Cottingham claimed that he had murdered at least 100 women in various regions of the United States. He is currently incarcerated at Southwood State Prison in New Jersey with multiple life sentences from both states. 18. Bloodied blade from Jack the Ripper. At the center of this weapons grouping is a large Victorian-era knife, purportedly tied to Jack the Ripper. Though the killer was never identified, the blade was recovered from Whitechapel and exhibits similar patterns to wounds found on several real-life victims. It's positioned as the focal point of the display, elevated slightly above the other knives. 19. Letter and parking ticket from David Berkowitz, son of Sam. Beneath the knife display sits a framed letter and parking ticket connected to David Berkowitz. The ticket, issued near a murder scene, was key in identifying him. The letter, written in Berkowitz's cryptic style, taunted police and media alike. Both documents are yellowed with age, sealed behind UV protective glass. Berkowitz was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison for each murder, to be served consecutively. He is at Shawangunk Correctional Facility in Ulster County, where he has claimed to have found God and is involved with the prison ministry. His next parole hearing is scheduled for May of 2026. 20. Hatchet from the Axeman of New Orleans. On the north wall, a bloodied hatchet with a wooden handle is labeled as belonging to the Axeman of New Orleans, an unidentified killer who targeted Italian grocers in the early 1900s. This weapon was thrown by Dexter during his confrontation with Charlie, injuring her arm and forcing her to drop her weapon. 21. Spiked nail bat, taken from Keith Bauer, the Canton Clubber. Beside the Axeman's weapon hangs a nailed baseball bat, still stained with dark smears. It belonged to Keith Bauer, who bludgeoned at least 3 victims in the Canton area.
And that you're a serial killer? Good luck with that.
Let me talk to him. Give me 5 minutes of his time.
After his death at the hands of Charlie, this bat was added to the collection. It rests on a diagonal wall hook beside the Axeman's hatchet, his file in the drawers, marked red for inactive and intended for disposal. 22. Bushmaster XM15 rifle from John Allen Muhammad and Lee Boyd Malvo, the DC sniper. Centrally mounted above the other weapons on the north wall is a .223 caliber Bushmaster XM15 sniper rifle, complete with a stand. This weapon was used by Muhammad and his accomplice Malvo in the 2002 sniper attacks around Washington, D.C., which killed 10 people. In 2003, Muhammad was sentenced to death, and in 2009, he was executed by lethal injection. Malvo, a juvenile, received 6 life sentences in Maryland and 3 in Virginia. In 2017, Malvo's life sentences in Virginia were vacated without parole on appeal. 23. Handgun from Daniel Lee Siebert, the Southside Slayer. To the right of the sniper rifle is a black handgun once used by Daniel Lee Siebert. Known for murdering multiple women across several states, Siebert's weapon is displayed with its safety switch locked and a tag referencing recovered shell casings. He was convicted of 5 murders and confessed to at least 12 more. Siebert died on April 22, 2008, in Holman Prison near Atmore, of complications from cancer. 24. Sawed-off Ruger rifle from Joseph Christopher, the Midtown Slasher. Further to the right is a sawed-off Ruger 1022 semi-automatic rifle used by Joseph Christopher, who targeted black men in racially motivated attacks in New York. Christopher claimed that he committed 13 murders, but was only convicted of 3. He died in prison due to a rare form of male breast cancer on March 1, 1993, at the age of 37. The weapon's shortened barrel and custom grip are clearly visible behind its locked acrylic display. 25. Fine china plate from Joseph D'Angelo, the Golden State Killer. Beneath the row of firearms, sitting on a white pedestal, is a cracked porcelain plate, part of a set used during D'Angelo's break-ins. He often placed dishes on his victims' backs to prevent them from moving. D'Angelo was a former police officer who committed at least 13 murders, at least 51 essays and more than 120 burglaries across California between 1974 and 1986. In August 2020, D'Angelo received multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole and is incarcerated in protective custody at California State Prison, Corcoran. This particular plate was shattered when Prater fired at Dexter during the climax of their confrontation. 26. Bloodied chainsaw from Max Bernard Frank, the Chainsaw Professor. Next to the fine china is a heavily rusted chainsaw caked in dried blood. Max Bernard Frank, dubbed the Chainsaw Professor, used it in at least 3 confirmed murders. He was sentenced to 25 years to life, but died of a heart attack in Corcoran State Prison on September 18, 1997. This weapon is seen again during Dexter's final battle in the vault. 27. Ruger Mini 14 and Topo Map from Robert Hansen, the Butcher Baker. On the upper left wall of Room 2 is a dual display, a Ruger Mini 14 rifle and a topographical hunting map. Hansen abducted women, flew them to the Alaskan wilderness, and hunted them for sport. Hansen was captured in 1983 and sentenced to 461 years imprisonment without the possibility of parole. He died in 2014 of natural causes at age 75. The map is annotated with potential kill zones. 28. Cut ponytails from Al Walker, aka Al Jolly, Rapunzel.
A gift from one of my guests, Rapunzel. You'll meet him tonight.
Great, I get to meet Ponytail Guy.
On the lower left wall, across from the pig farmer's display, is a chilling arrangement of 5 severed ponytails. Al Jolly, a Midwestern father of 4, strangled women with long hair and kept these as trophies. The strands are tied with faded hairbands and arranged by length on a black velvet backing. Al is the only killer from Prater's club to live. However, Dexter finds Al's file and takes it with him to track him down. Room 3, 29. Blood slide box and kill knife from the Bay Harbor Butcher, misattributed to James Dokes.
I've missed you, friends.
At the center of room 3 is a pedestal holding an open wooden box containing 23 preserved blood slides, each representing a victim of the so-called Bay Harbor Butcher. A tag misattributes these killings to Sergeant James Dokes. Also on display is a hunting knife, part of the butcher's kill kit. In reality, the slides and the weapon belong to Dexter Morgan. During Prater's vault confrontation, Dexter uses the same knife to kill Prater and reclaims his blood slides before escaping. 30. Sword of John the Revelator from Travis Marshall, the Doomsday Killer. In the lower right corner stands a Roman-era gladius. This sword, once wielded by Travis Marshall, was used to stab 6 of his 13 known victims. Each murder was designed as part of a biblical tableau, as Marshall believed he was enacting the Book of Revelation. The sword's edge is dulled from use, but the hilt bears faint traces of blood and religious engravings. Dexter used this same sword when he killed Travis Marshall years earlier. 31. Pentagram sheet from Richard Ramirez, the Nightstalker. Below the Doomsday Sword is a blood-stained cloth inscribed with a pentagram, a ritualistic signature left by Richard Ramirez at multiple crime scenes. From April 1984 to August 1985, Ramirez murdered at least 15 people during various break-ins, with his crimes usually taking place after dark. He was convicted and sentenced to death in 1989, and died of complications secondary to B-cell lymphoma while awaiting execution on June 7, 2013. The sheet was taken from the bedroom of one of his California victims. Its corners are pinned under glass, and a notation beneath the display confirms its connection to the Nightstalker's 1980s rampage. 32. High Standard 22 revolver from Eileen Warnos. Mounted on the upper right wall is a high standard 22 caliber revolver, once used by Eileen Warnos, a sex worker turned serial killer. Warnos murdered 7 of her male clients in Florida. She was sentenced to death for 6 of the murders and was executed in 2002 after spending more than 10 years on Florida's death row. The revolver has notches carved into its handle, likely representing her confirmed kills. 33. 32 caliber revolver from Randall Woodfield, the I-5 killer. Adjacent to Warnos's firearm is a 32 caliber revolver linked to Randall Woodfield, a former Green Bay Packer pick and murdered women along the I-5 corridor in the Pacific Northwest. Though convicted in only 1 murder, he has been linked to a total of 18 murders and is suspected of having killed up to 44 people. He is currently incarcerated at the Oregon State Penitentiary. The weapon's serial number was filed off, and it's accompanied by an evidence tag from an Oregon crime lab. 34. Duffel bag from Salvatore Peroni, the John Doe duffel bag killer. Positioned below both revolvers is a black duffel bag. Perone, also known as the son of Sal Killer, was a traveling clothing salesman who killed 3 merchants in Brooklyn in a series of attacks that had shopkeepers on alert for months. He used the duffel bag to transport a sawed-off rifle and clothing between crime scenes in Brooklyn. Inside the bag are bloodstains and the faint odor of gun oil. Peroni was sentenced to 75 years to life in prison.
These are mine? Thanks for the bag, Sal.
Dexter later uses this very bag to carry Prater's killer files and his recovered blood slides when escaping the vault. 35. Machete from Juan Corona. In the upper left corner, a wide-bladed machete is fixed to a walnut display board. It belonged to Juan Corona, who buried 25 male laborers in orchards near Yuba City, California. Dried vegetation clings to the blade's handle, and an evidence marker reads "confirmed with 3+ victims." He served a life sentence in California State Prison, Corcoran, and died in 2019. 36. Straight razors from Jake Bird. Below Corona's machete lies a collection of straight razors. Although Bird was convicted using an axe, the razors reflect additional tools found in his possession. Bird allegedly cursed his executioners, and several died unexpectedly, a detail Prater notes in his file on the killer. Prior to his execution, Bird had implicated himself in up to 46 murders. He was hanged on July 15, 1949. 37. 19th century hammer from the Bloody Benders. At the base of the same display is an iron-headed hammer dating back to the 1870s. This belonged to the Bender family, a family of Kansas homesteaders who murdered guests and buried them on their property. By including the recovered body parts not matched to the bodies found, the finds are speculated to represent the remains of more than 20 victims. The hammer's wood grip is splintered, and the rusted head is flattened from repeated use. 38. Shovel from the West Mesa Killer. Along the lower left wall, isolated in its own display case, is a rusty shovel found near the West Mesa burial site in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The tool is believed to have been used to dig the graves of at least 11 victims, most of them sex workers. The blade is heavily worn and warped. Room 4. 39. Rope, glasses, and mask from Dennis Rader, the BTK Killer. In the center of Room 4 sits a pedestal featuring 3 items: a pair of glasses, a mask, and a length of binding rope. These belong to Dennis Rader, who bound, tortured, and killed 10 victims between 1974 and 1991 while leading a seemingly normal life in Kansas. The rope shows frayed wear, the glasses are wire-rimmed and cracked, and the mask resembles one described in several of his staged crime scenes. He is currently incarcerated at the El Dorado Correctional Facility in Kansas, serving 10 consecutive life sentences. 40. Chrome hammer from Arthur Mitchell, the Trinity Killer.
The infamous Trinity Killer.
Displayed on the lower right wall, above the Brooklyn Thrill Killer's item, is a polished chrome hammer. Arthur Mitchell used this weapon in the final stage of his 4-part kill cycle, bludgeoning a father figure to death. Though initially believed to kill in sets of 3, Mitchell's true signature involved 4 ritual murders repeated across states. This hammer was recovered after his death and bears microscopic traces of blood in the grooves. It is the same model hammer Dexter used to kill Arthur. 41. Brass knuckles from the Brooklyn Thrill Killers. Beneath the Trinity Killer's hammer, a tarnished pair of brass knuckles sits in a recessed wall slot. This gang of teens carried out violent attacks in 1950s Brooklyn under a supposed moral crusade. The 4 members of the gang were teenagers who belonged to Brooklyn's Jewish community: Jack Koslow, 18, Melvin Mittman, 17, Jerome Lieberman, 17, and Robert Trachtenberg, 15. The knuckles were used in at least 2 known assaults and retained faint markings on the interior grip, possibly from the wearer's fingers. Trachtenberg turned state's evidence and was eventually sent to a reformatory. Lieberman had the charges against him dismissed for lack of evidence. Koslow and Mittman were found guilty of felony murder during the act of kidnapping. They eventually won their appeal at their retrial and pleaded guilty of second-degree murder and were sentenced to 10 to 20 years, receiving credit for the 4 years they had already served in jail. 42. Rope-wrapped mannequin heads from Kenneth Bianchi, the Hillside Strangler. In the upper right corner, clear mannequin heads are wrapped with multiple lengths of nylon rope. These replicate how Kenneth Bianchi and his cousin Angelo Buono restrained their victims in Los Angeles. The ropes were used in his murders and are arranged in a vertical spiral and encased in plexiglass to prevent fraying from age and air exposure. Bianchi is currently serving a sentence of life imprisonment in Washington State Penitentiary. 43. Rope from Earl Nelson, the Dark Strangler. Beneath Bianchi's items is a single heavy-duty rope attributed to Earl Nelson, one of America's earliest known serial killers. Nelson's crimes took place across several states and often involved strangulation. The display pairs this rope with a mannequin head in a loose noose configuration. Ironically, Nelson was executed by hanging in Winnipeg in 1928. 44. Extension cord from Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer. Directly beneath the Dark Strangler's display is a thick orange extension cord, wrapped tightly around a set of translucent mannequin hands. Ridgway, who confessed to killing 71 women, frequently used ligatures during his murders. The cord in the vault is looped into knots and shows burn-like abrasions at key tension points. Ridgway is currently serving 48 life sentences plus 480 years at Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla, without the possibility of parole. 45. S&M outfit from Larry Eiler, the Interstate Killer. In the upper left corner of Room 4, a dark leather outfit associated with Larry Eiler's murders is arranged across a dress form. Eiler, who targeted young men along Midwestern highways, was known to bind and mutilate victims, with a minimum of 21 victims. The clothing includes a collar, buckled straps, and visible tear marks across the chest area. Eiler died of AIDS-related complications in 1994 while incarcerated on death row. 46. Blade from Gerald Stano. On the middle alcove of the left wall, a long, slender blade is presented above a belt. Gerald Stano confessed to the murders of at least 41 women, but police suspect his victim count may be closer to 88. The knife's blade is thin and tapered, with a bone handle. Lab markings on the base suggest it was processed for DNA testing. Stano was found guilty of 9 murders and received 8 life sentences and 1 death sentence, the latter of which was carried out by electric chair on March 23, 1998, in Florida State Prison. 47. Belt from Henry Louis Wallace. the Taco Bell Strangler. Below Stano's knife sits a worn leather belt, wrapped around a clear mannequin's head. Wallace used similar belts to strangle 11 women, many of whom he knew personally. The belt's buckle is slightly bent, and the leather is creased and darkened at the center, indicating pressure points. His moniker is attributed to him working as a manager at Taco Bell, and several of his victims were co-workers or related to them. Henry is currently awaiting execution at Central Prison in Raleigh. 48. Plastic bag from Robert Lee Yates, the grocery bag killer. In the lower left corner, a clear grocery-style plastic bag is displayed with a printed "Thank You" logo. Yates used similar bags to suffocate victims, often sex workers, and dispose of their remains in Spokane, Washington. The bag is sealed behind acrylic and includes a crime lab tag indicating trace blood residue. Yates, responsible for at least 16 murders, is currently serving life in prison at the Washington State Penitentiary. 49. Belt from Anthony Sowell, the Cleveland Strangler. Directly beneath the grocery bag killer's item is another display featuring a black belt, again wrapped around a mannequin's head. Sowell murdered 11 women in Cleveland, hiding bodies in and around his home. The belt in the vault is cracked along the interior and shows indentations from apparent over-tightening. After being sentenced to death for the murders, Sowell died at the Chillicothe Correctional Institution from a terminal illness. Room 5. 50. Metal pins from Albert Fish, the Gray Man. At the center of Room 5 sits a pedestal bearing a disturbing collection, several long metallic pins. These were self-inserted by Albert Fish, a sadistic killer and cannibal who preyed on children in the early 1900s. X-rays revealed dozens of these needles embedded in his pelvis. The pins in Prater's vault were recovered during his autopsy and are presented upright in a foam-lined case. Fish was executed on January 16, 1936, in the electric chair at Sing Sing. 51. Guitar and a Beach Boys' Never Learn Not to Love CD from Charles Manson. In the lower right corner, a wooden acoustic guitar is mounted beside a CD single of Never Learn Not to Love by the Beach Boys. The song was adapted from Manson's original composition, Cease to Exist. Though Manson did not physically commit murders, he directed the Manson family cult to kill on his behalf, including the infamous Tate LaBianca murders. The guitar features initials carved into the body, and the CD case is cracked and yellowing. After a guilty verdict, Manson spent the rest of his life at Corcoran Prison in Bakersfield, California. He died from complications from colon cancer at a nearby hospital on November 19, 2017. 52. Steering wheel from Ronald Dominique, the Bayou Strangler. In the upper right corner, a detached car steering wheel is mounted to the wall. Ronald Dominique, who murdered at least 23 men in Louisiana, used his vehicle to lure and transport victims. The steering wheel, cracked at the base, is accompanied by a notation linking it to his final crime scene. Below the display sit two wooden drawers containing Prater's private files and Cooper Morris's letters. Ronald is currently serving 8 life sentences at the Louisiana State Penitentiary in Angola. 53. Manhole cover remover from Don Frampt, the New York Ripper.
This was the New York Rippers, a man who terrorized the streets I once played on as a child. Highly prolific.
On the upper left wall is a rusted industrial-grade manhole cover remover, the signature weapon of Don Frampt, also known as the New York Ripper. Frampt used this tool to bludgeon and gut his victims. He then escaped through the sewer system. Dexter attempts to use this same weapon to escape the vault, returning it to its display afterward. Detectives Claudette Wilson and Melvin Oliva learn Frampt's identity using files recovered from the vault. 54. VW driver's seat from Ted Bundy. Midway along the left wall, a discolored and cracked driver's seat sits alone. It was removed from Bundy's iconic beige Volkswagen Beetle, the car he used to lure and abduct victims. The seat cushion is worn through, and traces of blood and hair were recovered during forensic testing in the 1970s. The seat's ID plate is displayed below on a brass plaque. Bundy was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison on January 24, 1989. 55. Cheryl Johnson record from Wayne Williams, the Atlanta child killer. In the lower left corner is a vinyl record titled Cheryl Johnson Try a Little Harder. Convicted of killing 2 adult men and suspected in over 20 child murders, was linked to this record label and audio equipment through forensic fiber analysis. The sleeve shows water damage and discoloration. Williams is serving his sentence at Telfair State Prison. He was never tried for any of the Atlanta child murders. 56. Glasses and scalpel bag from Harold Shipman, Dr. Death. Directly below the Atlanta child killer's record, a worn leather medical bag is displayed alongside a pair of wire-rimmed glasses. Dr. Harold Shipman, a British physician, is believed to have murdered an estimated 250 patients via lethal injections. The bag's clasp is broken, and one lens in the glasses is cracked, both recovered from his medical practice prior to his arrest. On January 13, 2004, one day before his 58th birthday, Shipman hanged himself in his cell at HM Prison Wakefield, West Yorkshire. 57. A box of letters from Cooper Morris. Located in the lower of the 2 wooden drawers beneath Ronald Dominique's steering wheel display, this sealed box contains the original letters sent by Cooper Morris to a young Leon Prater. Morris, who murdered Prater's parents, unknowingly sparked Prater's serial killer obsession. Though not displayed openly like the other trophies, these letters are considered Prater's first true collectible, the psychological seed of the entire vault. Leon felt more of a connection to Cooper than he ever did to his parents. Prater kept the letters hidden, out of reverence, not shame. 58 through 68. Leon Prater's files. Inside room 5, beneath Ronald Dominique's display, are 2 drawers filled with Leon Prater's alphabetized serial killer files. These contain detailed surveillance reports, forensic data, psychological profiles, and personal notes. While these killers do not have physical items on display in the vault, Prater clearly considered them part of his extended collection. The confirmed killers only in Prater's files. 58, Charlotte Brown, aka Charlie.
What's this?
Just a little something I found in your boss's secret file cabinet, time-stamped right before Mia's tragic suicide. There's a whole file on you.
Leon Prater's most trusted associate and personal fixer. Charlie did more than just clean up after killers. She scouted, recruited, and at times executed targets herself. Prater relied on her to maintain his network, silence threats, and procure new trophies for the vault. Her file includes surveillance photos, kill documentation, and images of her arranging the murder of Mia LaPierre. The file wasn't a trophy, just a means to keep her under Prater's control. 59. Callahan, 60. Jaw Splitter, 61. Kane, 62. Kincaid, 63. Kroll, 64. Midnight Mangler, 65. Rourke, 66. Sleepy-Eyed Stranger, 67. Thorne, 68. Yonkers Slayer. Along with his blood slides, Dexter takes the files of Sleepy-Eyed Stranger, Jaw Splitter, Midnight Mangler, Yonkers Slayer, and Al Walker, aka Al Jolly, when he leaves, ensuring he can find Al and finish what he started as well as have additional killers to hunt. Room 6. 69. Human Skin Lamp from Ed Gein, the Butcher of Plainview. At the center of Room 6 sits a grotesque centerpiece, a functioning table lamp constructed from human skin, stretched over a frame made of bone. Ed Gein, the inspiration for numerous fictional killers, exhumed corpses and murdered women in the 1950s. This lamp is a chilling example of his macabre home decor. Stitched seams are clearly visible, and the lampshade retains the texture of preserved epidermis. Gein was found legally insane and died at Mendota Mental Health Institute from respiratory failure resulting from lung cancer on July 26, 1984, aged 77. 70. Plaster death mask from the Cleveland torso murderer. In the lower right corner, a white plaster mask lies in a velvet-lined display case. The Cleveland torso murderer, active in the 1930s, was never caught, and this mask is modeled after one of his unidentified victims. It was created post-mortem and discovered in a storage unit containing old forensic evidence. The mask's features are partially obscured, with a fractured left cheek and empty eye sockets. 71. Unidentified flesh object from Rex Heuermann, Gilgo Beach Killer. Beneath the torso murderer's mask is an ambiguous object, possibly a preserved section of human skin. Though not formally labeled, it's connected to Rex Heuermann, the accused Gilgo Beach serial killer. The artifact appears to be cured tissue shaped into a rough spiral, and it's sealed in a vacuum chamber within the case. Its provenance is documented in Prater's handwritten logbooks. Rex has been indicted for multiple murders, but the case has yet to go to trial. 72. Horned mask from the flight attendant killer. In the upper right corner is a custom-made theatrical mask adorned with curled horns. The so-called flight attendant killer used this mask during at least 2 of his murders, both of which involved victims staged in elaborate poses. The mask is cracked along the brow and shows traces of stage makeup. It shares a display case with a prison uniform from another killer. 73. Prison shirt from Donald Pee Wee Gaskins, the meanest man. Beneath the flight attendant killer's mask, a gray prison uniform shirt is displayed. It belonged to Donald Henry Gaskins, who claimed to have murdered 100 people. Known for his small stature and vicious temperament, Gaskins killed both outside and inside prison. The uniform includes an inmate tag and bloodstains around the collar. Gaskins received the death sentence in September 1991 at Central Correctional Institution in Columbia, South Carolina. 74. Blade and Mother's Day card from Edmund Kemper, the co-ed killer. In the upper left corner of Room 6 is a 2-item shrine to Edmund Kemper, a hunting blade and a handwritten Mother's Day card. Kemper murdered 10 people, including his own mother and grandparents. He frequently discussed his crimes with a chilling calm. The blade's handle is engraved with initials, while the card contains disturbing prose written in red ink. Kemper is currently incarcerated at California Medical Facility in Vacaville. 75. Bloodied socks from William Suff, the Lake Elsinore killer. Beneath Kemper's display is a small box containing a pair of dirty blood-speckled socks. William Suff targeted women in California during the 1980s and 90s. The socks, recovered from his vehicle, were linked to multiple victims through DNA evidence. They are folded carefully and partially burned on the toes. Suff resides on death row at San Quentin State Prison. 76. License plates from William Bonin, the Freeway Killer. Below Suff's socks are 2 rusted California license plates, R1D22 F4. These were mounted to William Bonin's van, which he used to abduct, assault, and murder 21 teenage boys and young men between May of 1979 and June of 1980 in Southern California. The plates are bolted to a black mounting board and include DMV registration records behind glass. Bonin was executed by lethal injection inside the gas chamber at San Quentin State Prison on February 23, 1996. 77. Nightgown and .25 caliber handgun from Lonnie David Franklin Jr., the Grim Sleeper. In the lower left corner, a tattered floral print nightgown and a .25 caliber semi-automatic handgun are displayed together. Franklin left a decades-long gap between murders, hence the nickname Grim Sleeper. The nightgown was recovered from one of his victims, while the handgun matches ballistics from multiple crime scenes. The gun's grip is cracked, and the nightgown is blood-stained and faded with time. On March 28, 2020, Franklin was found dead in his cell at San Quentin State Prison while on death row. Prater's vault wasn't just a gallery of Dexter's kills, it was a museum of monsters, a record of predators who left their own trophies behind. But not every villain was caught on camera. Some of the deadliest figures in Dexter's world operated entirely off-screen. To explore those hidden threats, don't miss the next video. Every off-screen Dexter villain and antagonist explained.